Hi everyone, welcome back to Measure Matters. I'm Krista Seiden, Analytics Advocate at Google.
And I'm Louis Gray.
And today is episode 7 of Measure Matters, and we're really excited to talk about Data Studio and what's new and great with this product. So before we begin, let's look at our agenda. So first, we'll talk about what we talked about the last time previously on Measure Matters. What's new in analytics, our word on the street or what's going on in social, and then our big topic, which is what is new and great in Data Studio. And we actually have a special guest joining us this time, so stay tuned for that. Next, we're going to go ahead and look at what previously happened on Measure Matters. So Louis, we talked about optimization best practices and how personalization is really the next step that we're trying to achieve, right?
Absolutely. We went through and talked about what I call the third wave of the web, which is this personalization of the web and making the web smarter as you browse and as we get to know more about you to really make it appear the way that you want it to be. We also went deep into little things like implicit personalization, explicit personalization, and talked about a lot of the new pieces applying to the product with the GMP rebrand and the new data blending in Data Studio.
Yeah, I thought it was a really interesting episode. So if you haven't checked that out, follow the link, go watch it, and then continue on to this one. So next, let's talk about what is new. So several things here. First, and I am super excited about this one, and I hope you guys all are too, is commonly used metrics and dimensions. So what this means is that when you are now selecting either a dimension via the segment builder or secondary dimension picker or in a custom report within Google Analytics or a metric in a custom report in Google Analytics, we now have a top level category called commonly used. What this does is it looks at some of the most commonly used metrics or dimensions across Google Analytics and brings those top of mind. Previously, if you were searching for something like page in the search box, you'd get a long list of different dimensions that had the word page in it, and the one you actually most often wanted, just page, was usually at the very bottom. So you had to scroll through and finally find that one. So we've brought that front and center, and I know it's saving me a lot of time, and I think I've heard a lot of good feedback that it's saving you guys time too. So we hope that you really like this one. We posted about it on social, so you can check out the link to learn a little bit more there. But I mean, I think this is one of my favorite releases of the year, if not ever.
This is solid. I mean, this is one of the things where we just reduce complexity. Our goal with analytics is to get you to the data that's important right away. We shouldn't have to confuse you by having you search through the many different options and features that are there. So this is a little piece that has a big impact.
Yep. So next up, we have Data Studio Explorer and blending and the report gallery. So we actually had a great blog post on this. It goes into a lot of detail. That link out will take you to that information. But we really went into detail about how you can go deep in insights by combining different data sets and blending that data into charts that are going to tell one story together, as well as some of the other really cool things that are new in Data Studio. Now, I don't want to go into too much detail here because I know that Mary, our special guest, is going to go into detail a little bit later on. So let's go ahead and move on.
Absolutely. And this, we're going to talk a lot about Data Studio today for some reason. I guess it's probably what the show's about. But one thing I was super excited about was the simplified social sharing. Data Studio just rolled out a new integration with Embedly, which enables you to share your content live with real-time updating from your Data Studio reports outside of Data Studio. And so what this enables you to do is share on Medium, share on Reddit, or hundreds of different external places. And here's a good example from Felipe Hoffa, who talked about page views and Stack Overflow, where he took a Data Studio report and all the fancy charts that we've gotten used to in this visualization product and take it out to Medium. And I know that I can go look at that post in 2 weeks or 2 months, and the content will continue to be updated. So he doesn't have to just go in and update the blog post or even upload graphics. It just works. And so this is synchronized, and it has a really intelligent, rich snippet with a title and thumbnail and report subscription. And as someone who essentially lives on social all day, this is one of the biggest highlights of the year for me. And we also, Krista, here you are again, really owning this studio. We had a brand new mini course for Firebase come out that we're super excited about, the highlights of Firebase demo project. And you and Steve did a series of videos on this, including a playlist. Anything you want to add about this?
Yeah, so this is our first big educational offering for Google Analytics for Firebase. And the goal is really to take you from the very beginning of creating a Firebase project and getting started all the way through to understanding how to implement events in the best practice way, using your audiences and user properties, and how you can integrate across Firebase and across other Google products. So I think this is a really interesting course. Steve is one of our product managers on Google Analytics for Firebase who joined me for this. And I think there's a lot of great information there. So definitely follow the link, check it out, let us know what you think.
And this builds on a previous episode of Measure Matters. For those of you who stuck with us every couple of weeks, really appreciate that. But we went deep into GA for Firebase and talked about how the world of measurement is changing, where it's not just flat websites anymore, but apps. And we're going to be talking a lot about apps in Firebase as we go forward. So I'm glad that this mini course launched. And this brings us to word on the street. I mentioned social a few times already. The word on the street really finds those things that people are talking about on the web, and sometimes that includes you. And so if you have interesting content that talks about all of our different products in the suite, let us know. And you can do that via the hashtag #MeasureMatters or just by pinging Google Analytics. We're not going to miss it. And one of the highlights that I really enjoyed was from one of our colleagues, Daniel Weisberg, who, another one of our advocate teams, basically talked about the Brazilian presidential debate. Some members of Google news team and media team working with the political side basically worked with them to have a real-time report of how the candidates and their comments were trending on Google Trends and throughout the web as people indicated their interest through search. And so we had a real-time Google Trends data API flowing through this information to potential voters, and you could see how that was acting live. And obviously, not everybody lives in Brazil, but the data is still very cool. So if you want to check that out, we do have the link in there, and I do recommend you get checked out.
And that was Data Studio again, right?
Data Studio again. I think this is
we have a common theme this episode.
Yeah, we're going to step away from Data Studio for a half second. Jeffalytics really went deep in analytics account setup. And one thing I'd like to talk about with Measure Matters is we're not just talking to the pro users who use this every single day. We're talking to those folks who are just getting started with GA, really want to get focused on optimization and getting their account right. And so what he was able to do is to get a dedicated checklist to analyze analytics data for your company and divide it into 3 pieces, both beginner, intermediate, and advanced sections. And so with that, I know we're getting to our big question.
That's right. So today our big question is what is new and great with Data Studio? And I'm so excited that we have Mary Pishny, who is a product manager on Data Studio, here to talk about this with us. Thank you for joining us, Mary.
Well, thanks so much for having me, and thanks for being such great advocates for Data Studios.
Absolutely.
Fun just to listen to all the updates you all were sharing.
I mean, I think we have talked about Data Studio in every single episode of Measure Matters that we've done because it is just so impactful across the industry these days. I mean, so many people are talking on social, and so many of our product updates are really highlighted via Data Studio, which is just really cool.
That is great to hear.
It's easy to advocate for great products, especially when our users appreciate it so much. And so all we are doing is reflecting what's happening on the product side and reflecting what our users tell us. And so the more we talk about Data Studio, they're happy, and the product is just doing so well.
Great.
That's right. So I think we have a couple of overview slides for Data Studio, and then we're really going to hand it off to Mary, and she's going to walk us through what's new and great and actually going to do some demo to show us some of these things. So we're really excited to get to that, but let's dive into our slides just for a little bit of an overview. So we know that good data management is hard. Data lives in a lot of different places. I've been a practitioner and an analyst myself. I know what it's like to really try to clod together so many different sources of data and make it all make sense in a single report, visualize that out, share it, get people to actually access this data or this dashboard whenever you want. I mean, Mary, you've probably heard this from many clients. This is something that's often hard to do.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of things there, Krista, that are really important. Just getting access to your data is a hard step.
Yep.
Combining all that data together to bring together the right set of data is its own challenge.
Yep.
And then actually visualizing it and sharing it out is another set of challenges.
Totally.
And we found that as people were grappling with each step along the way, there was a lot of different tools that were in the mix. And it just created a really complex process for our users.
Yep. And in fact, a quote I love from the Harvard Business Review, businesses that integrate multiple sources of customer and marketing data significantly outperform other companies in terms of sales, profits, and margin. They also had dramatically higher total shareholder returns. I think this just speaks to the amazing opportunity that we have to really reduce this complexity and make this something that can permeate throughout the business.
Yep.
And that is where Data Studio comes in. So we've really worked as a team to simplify this workflow. So Mary's going to show us how we can easily connect to our data just by creating a new data source and getting up and running very quickly. You can then visualize all of that data in beautiful and informative reports. And finally, and probably most importantly, is sharing out across the organization. I can't tell you the number of times I've had executives ask me for access to certain data. This is way before Data Studio and even before things like Tableau or other visualization products, where I would give them access to a dashboard that I made in Google Analytics or some other product, and they would never log in. Getting them to actually log into the tool to be able to view this dashboard was so hard that it just made this process very complex. So being able to share via just a simple link and opening that on any device, I think is huge.
Yeah, I would actually jump in and say your story was something that we heard from a lot of users. So before we built Data Studio, we did a ton of research. And the probably the most interesting piece about all this research was that no matter who we talked to, small company, big company, different industries, everyone was seeing the same set of challenges across the board. And frankly was going through a very similar workflow every time. So they're connecting to their data, they were visualizing it, and they were sharing it out.
And so this is something that comes up a lot, depending on which industry we're talking to. People are literally downloading CSV Excel files and attaching them to their bosses on Sunday nights or Monday mornings in time for the weekly reports. And so when I say, look, you don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to take that download and upload, but just give them a link that consistently updates and has the data they want, that they can literally dive in and make the changes that they want to change different time periods or different selectors. It's a game changer. And it realizes that every one of these people who's been doing it the same way forever, they get 20 minutes back, they get 30 minutes back. Whatever that time was that they always got used to doing, they can go do something else that's more valuable.
Been there, done that, never want to go back. That was hours of my life I can't get back. So connectors. We have a ton of different ways to connect to data. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about this?
Yeah, so as we were talking about that workflow that everyone was consistently going through, the first piece was that you needed to get access to your data. And the power of being able to bring all your data together is really having all of your data. So if you have one set of data here and another set here, it really kind of cripples the process if you can't bring that all together in one spot. So we really invested heavily in Data Studio and enabling you to connect to all of your different data sources and data sets. Today that means that we have over 100 different connectors connecting to 500 plus data sets. And you'll see some kind of common names on that list. So Google Analytics, Google Ads, things like Search Console. So we have a wide breadth of Google connectors. But we also know that it's really important to be able to connect to data outside of Google, which is where our Community Connector program comes in.
Absolutely.
So with Community Connectors, we allow you to connect to data out through any digital data set that's online. You can build your own connector if you're a developer or have some development resources at your company, or you can leverage one of the connectors that our developers have published to our Community Connector community. So this really expands the access to your data. So not only do you get your Google data, but really data across the ecosystem.
Awesome. And then we get to templates. Lewis, I know you've played around with a lot of these. You want to tell us about these?
Yeah, absolutely. I think every couple of weeks when we do this, we talk about new templates that people have put out. And one of the things that's beneficial about a template is you don't have to build it all yourself. And I think most of us would prefer not to do the work. And so one of the interesting things about this brand new gallery, and I know you're going to highlight some of that going forward, is that you can find the people who are really the experts in their field, who have designed exquisite, beautiful templates with Data Studio that highlight very best practices in marketing measurement, in public relations measurement. I know I talk to those audiences a lot. Even a lot of folks that are focused on things like automotive, in car sales and rentals and things like that, where not necessarily on the top of mind for us each day, but for them it is always on their mind. And so all we want to do is be able to give people the tools that adapt to their business. And so when they've gone out and done that extra work and handed it off to the community, it's really self-fulfilling. It's really a lot of fun to see that take place. And one of the things that I like is I get to see these comments flow through on Data Studio on social, and I see people say, oh my goodness, I can create pink reports. Or we know Datasaurus Rex has like a big old Tyrannosaurus Rex up at the top. And so people are really enjoying the fact they can make it look however they want. And we're not giving them like a one-size-fits-all kind of cookie-cutter solution. We're giving them something that's very flexible. And so they have all these different options. They can design it and brand it the way that they want for their business, and we just get out of the way.
Yeah, you mentioned two things, Lewis, that I thought are really important. One is that a lot of us are not designers or experts on how to kind of compile this, but we need to get access to this data and share it out with our stakeholders.
Absolutely.
So we're trying to make that a lot easier for users to get up and running in just a couple clicks. So you'll continue to see investments and templates and making that easier for you to use. And then you also mentioned how there's people in the community that are building extraordinary reports that I see reports that I'm like, that is so cool. How did they do that? So we really want to promote that, and we're excited to have our gallery as kind of the one-stop shop for users to go and find those templates, because there's a lot out there, but sometimes just being able to find them is a challenge.
Yep, absolutely. So the last thing we have is to easily share insights. And I know we already talked about this a little bit in terms of getting your boss to log in and see this dashboard. I think there's one other thing here to touch on, though, and that is being able to work on these reports together. So Mary, if you created a report and shared it with me, I could jump in and start editing it as well in real time.
Yeah, we stole a page from our friends over at Drive, and we really liked their model of being able to have collaboration on the fly, where you can be in a document and seeing somebody else type. So we have a very similar model in Data Studio. So if Krista and I are in a report together, I can see Krista adding components to the page or adding styling updates, which makes that collaboration a lot easier.
Absolutely.
And I was going to say, this is what makes the web so powerful, is the fact that multiple people can log in and make changes to something. And really, I always tell people that any computer is my computer. So long as I have access to my own credentials, I can get in and I can impact my Drive files and I can impact my Data Studio reports. Any machine works. And so long as you have web on the back end, it's all going to flow like that. So I'm glad you brought up that synchronization.
Yep. All right, so now we've got a lot of new things going on in Data Studio. And Mary, I think we really want to turn it over to you to Drive here and really tell us about all of these exciting things you guys have been working on recently.
Yeah, I'm excited to share this with you. So I would say this is one of the most exciting parts about working on the Data Studio team, is that we really like to try and move fast and get things out to you. So before I jump in, I would just call out, there's a resource that is kind of a best friend if you're excited about what we're doing in Data Studio. Actually, every week we publish release notes, and we're very thoughtful about getting those updated. So you'll see those go out generally on Thursday every week, and those are in our Help Center as well as linked in our products. So I'm covering some things here, but there's actually a list of maybe 40 items that have launched recently. So we don't have time to cover all those. So I would say head to those release notes that are in our Help Center and in our product if you're really excited about all the different things that are now available in the product.
And you mentioned that you like to move fast, and I think that is very evidenced by the fact that pretty much every episode we are covering some new product, feature, or highlight from Data Studio. And I think that's one of the greatest things about this product, is the constant stream of new features that you're putting out.
Yeah. Well, we'll dive right in. So I know that this is a big no-no of slides, which is just to list a bunch of stuff. But frankly, that's all I could come up with, because we have a lot that has gone on even just in the past couple of weeks that I wanted to cover. Unfortunately, we don't have time to cover everything, but the ones that are highlighted in yellow are ones that I'm going to actually give a quick demo or a quick peek of what that actually looks like in the product. And I'll talk about a couple of these big investments a little bit more. But I did just want to call out that we've been working really hard on getting these features out to you quickly, and we do really listen to your feedback. So in the forums, in our issue tracker, we're paying attention. So thank you for all your feedback. So let's take a look at one of the big areas that we've been investing recently, which is Explore. So one of the issues that we heard from some of our users was that Data Studio is great. It helps us create these reports and visualizations that we can share out and start having conversations about this data. But there was a need to be able to do a lot more ad hoc analysis. So I don't necessarily need to kind of create a beautiful report, but I need to explore some data a little bit more. So we've invested a lot in this space, and we're excited to let you know that Explore is available for all Data Studio users. And what it lets you do is do exactly that, explore your data quickly. So I'll give you a demo of what that looks like. A part of this investment actually is really closely tied to BigQuery as well, because we found that a lot of users had data that was in a database that required SQL to access that data, and oftentimes that was just enough of a hurdle that they weren't able to access or explore that data quickly because they needed to bring in other teams, or they needed to kind of ramp up their SQL skills or refresh them. So we've worked really closely with the BigQuery team to allow you to have your tables in BigQuery and then start exploring those in Data Studio without having to write a single line of SQL.
I think this is one of the most exciting things certainly about this feature, but about Data Studio in general, is really providing access to data. And in this case, that means you don't have to be able to write SQL to be able to really query this data and explore what's going on.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of good feedback. People are excited.
And we've talked about Explorer a couple times already. We didn't want to scoop you on it, but this is something that's come up. Users get excited, and when they see these new features, they go out and they write blog posts and how they would approach it. So it's good to have you come in and actually talk about the genesis of it and how it got here.
Yep. So I'll do a demo of that in a second, but let me just run through a couple other areas that we've been investing. Sorry, I realized there's a click there. So the past screen was showing you what that could actually look like if you're writing that SQL query, and we can show you how you can start visually exploring that data. So next up, this is a feature that I think you all have talked about, but it's near and dear to my heart. We've been working on this for a while, and the feature is data blending. And what it allows you to do is actually combine data from different data sources all into the same component. So I know that our users were kind of pounding on the door saying, where is this? We really wanted to make this easy for users because we know how powerful it is to be able to have different data sources and compare them side by side. Yep. So we really invested in making this experience easy. So no formulas, no SQL again. You can do this all actually directly in our reporting tool and start combining that data.
Mary, I actually saw you do a demo of this a few weeks back, and the audience literally was awed because this is such a powerful feature for them.
Yep. So I know you all aren't in the audience with us today, but I will demo this, and hopefully it gets you excited for what's coming in Data Studio. And then the last thing I wanted to quickly touch on before jumping into the demos was we are continuing to invest in giving you more access to your data, and again, as Lewis said, making it easier for you to go from getting access to actually visualizing that data and sharing it out. So we've launched 2 new connectors recently that are a part of the Google Marketing Platform, which is Display and Video 360 and Search Ads 360. So both of those connectors are available for you in your accounts. So if you're a customer of one of those tools, you can now connect to those data sets directly in Data Studio and start visualizing that data. And we've also launched 2 new templates to go alongside that. So no need to create your own report from scratch. You can use our templates and get up and running quickly.
And those templates are in the gallery, right?
Yep, and we're continuing to add more templates to the gallery on an ongoing basis. So keep checking back there. There's templates that we provide. There's also templates that are coming from the community as well.
Great. Well, with that, I think everybody is saying, let's jump into the demo.
Yeah, let's do it. All right. So hopefully you all are able to see my screen. And just to kind of talk through this, so you might be new to Data Studio, and what you're seeing here is actually a Data Studio report. In this case, it's actually a template that we've created for you, which is our Search Ads 360 template. So you can see that there's different, we call them components on the page, or charts, that allow you to access your data. And this is, as both Krista and Lewis have mentioned, is live data. So it's a direct connection to your underlying system, bringing that data in for you. So you don't need to do anything to refresh that data. Now, in this case, this is great. This is actually using data from our merchandise store account. So we do some advertising for that store, and I can get a really quick look at how we can actually start visualizing that Search Ads 360 data.
And for those who haven't heard of the merchandise store, just really quickly,
Sure, yep.
It's our Google Analytics demo account. So anybody can actually access this Google Analytics account and this data, both in Google Analytics and in Data Studio, to be able to really play with the data and get some hands-on experience.
Yeah, exactly. And on top of that, this merchandise store actually does exist. We have a website
True, you
for
can
it.
buy Google branded gear.
You can. And we actually run ads for it. So in the case of Search Ads 360, we're actually looking at a Search Ads 360 account running ads for this store. So this is great, but I want to see this with my data. So I'm going to show you how you can go through and create a data source and actually use this template to visualize your own data. So the first things first is that you'll notice that there's a copy icon up here. I'm going to go ahead and say make a copy of this report. And it asks me to set the data source. And now, for those of you who aren't familiar, a data source is your connection to data. So it tells us a little bit about the configuration. So if it's an analytics account, what account, property, view, those type of details that we need to know. In this case, I actually am going to replace it with a new Search Ads 360 account that I'm going to create. So let's go ahead and create a new data source. And what you'll see here is all the different data sources that we have available for you. In this case, I need my Search Ads 360, which I can find here. I'm going to go ahead and select that. Now, this is where I configure that data source. So I provide some information to us to tell us what data that we want to connect to. In this case, I'm going to use my merchandise store account. And it shows us how Search Ads 360 is structured. So we have advertisers, and I'm going to use my Google Merchandise Store advertiser, and then I'm going to select all these accounts. Perfect. So this is creating a data source. It's pretty easy.
Yeah, I mean, it was a few clicks.
Yep. So I can go ahead and connect to this data source, and we'll actually show you all of the fields that are a part of this data source. So you'll hear us call this like a schema very frequently. So this is the schema that's available, and then we tell you a bit more about that data, so it helps you as you're figuring out how you want to use it. So what's the type, if we're aggregating it, if it's a number. And I'm going to go ahead and say add to report. So this is what I want to use in place of the demo data source. And now I can go ahead and say create report. We're actually going to create that report now using our own data. What we're in now is actually our editor view, so I can make this mine now. I've leveraged the beauty of the template, which allowed me to get started, and I've lost count, but I think maybe let's call it 5 or 6 clicks. And now if I wanted to brand this as my own, let's call it Mary's Company. If I want to if I want to add a dinosaur, I can do anything I want here. So I'm going to call it Mary's Sample Search Ads 360 Dashboard.
And what I liked about here was how simple that was, just to hit the copy button. And so what you're doing is you're taking a best practices template, kind of our best example of how we look at a real business. And I think Mary emphasized that, was that the Google Merchandise Store is not fake. It's real. You know, if you want to see the numbers go up, go buy something, right? So that's how it works. And so then you have this merchandise store with real data behind it. And what she did was she copied it over. You get that entire template with the different data source, and you pull it through. And so obviously, if your example had been a second e-commerce store, the numbers would change, the traffic would change, the results would change. And that's how it will look if any of you connect it to your own content.
And I'm sure Mary will go through this even more, but you can actually then keep what you want, get rid of things that might not make sense for your business here. It's pretty simple to edit this template now and make it your own.
Krista, let's say I don't like this detailed data view. I don't want to share that with my stakeholders. I can go ahead and get rid of that and replace it with something else.
Perfect.
Now, once this is ready to go, I can go ahead and view it and see what it looks like for my end users. And then, as we mentioned, a really powerful part here is how easy it is to share this out. So in just a click, I can open up our sharing dialog, and I could go ahead and put in your name. I'm going to share it with Krista. I'm going to share it with Lewis. And I'm going to give you guys edit access to this so you guys can go ahead and get ready. Let's go ahead and hit send.
I'm kind of jealous I don't have a laptop in front of me, because I could go ahead and make edits live right now.
Yeah, you could.
I'll wait till I get back to the desk.
Awesome. So that was just a quick look at how you can start using our templates to get up and running. I do want to call out, as we mentioned, that we're wanting to make it a lot easier for you to find some of our best practices, whether that's generated from Google or from our community. So we're happy to let you know that we do have a report and connector gallery now where you can search all the different reports that are available and also the different data sources, both across Google data sources as well as our community connector. This is available in our product. You'll see it on the left-hand side. You can also go to datastudio.google.com/gallery to access it, where you can see connected data, gallery, and home as well. Okay, so I know you all have talked a little bit about Explore. Have you showed everyone how cool it is to go from BigQuery into Data Studio?
No, I'm really excited for you to show this.
Okay.
We've talked about it.
I'm excited too. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over a little bit. And we've moved outside of Data Studio now into Google BigQuery, which is a platform that we support in Google Cloud that allows you to query really large sets of data. It's a very powerful tool, and we're finding that a lot of our users are using it and are increasingly putting more data there. But the way that you often access that data is through the BigQuery UI, which has an interface where you can write a SQL query to ask questions of that data. So now we're really excited to let you know that if you have your data in BigQuery and you want to start exploring that, you can do that by just coming over here. And in this example, this is actually that merchandise store analytics account that you all talked about. We actually have an export into BigQuery that's available as a demo.
That's right. That actually came out only a couple months ago. We covered it on a Measure Matters back when it released, and I think this is a wonderful data set to play around with here.
Yeah. So, and I can go ahead and start playing around with this data by hitting export, and then you'll see that there's an Explore and Data Studio option. So when I do this, it opens up our Explore interface, and I actually have this already loaded and ready to go for us here. And we now can start asking questions of the data just by using a drag and drop UI. So in this case, I know our analytics schema pretty well, so I'm going to jump around a little bit, but I know that we have different channels in Data Studio, and I want to look at my channel grouping and see how we acquire different users to our site. Yep. And so I'm going to go ahead and replace some of these fields here. Let's see here. Oh, after I said I knew our schema very well, I'm using our web schema. So I can go ahead and drag and drop different fields onto the page. Now, a table is powerful because we can see all the different rows, but in this case, I actually want to use this as a bar chart so I can start exploring my data in a little bit of a different manner.
And I think that right there is so cool that you can just easily take these dimensions and metrics that you're pulling in from, BigQuery here and just toggle between different visualizations.
Yep.
And that was super fast too.
It was. So this is one of those things that you don't actually, it's a little bit harder to talk about because it's harder to see on the page, but we've actually worked really hard to make this a very snappy, fast experience for you. So we're continuing to work on the performance of Explore so it's really quick, because we know when you're exploring your data, you want to be able to ask a question and get data back really quickly. So kind of, we call it under the hood, we're continuing to make improvements to make this a fast experience for you.
Absolutely.
So let's say I've got what I want here, which is my acquisition channel, and I'm looking at this across users, and I'm actually ready to save this, and so I can share it out with somebody else. Mm-hmm. I can go ahead and save this, and I can export it, and I could either add it to a new report, or in my case, I've actually created a report that I want to add it to. So I'm going to go ahead and say copy to an existing report, and I'm going to go ahead and open up a report that I've been working on. So what this report is it shows our analytics data, and it also shows our advertising data all in one place, which is really exciting. So now I can share this out with Krista and Lewis, and I can say, hey, take a look at how we're doing across both our web channels as well as our advertising. And I actually want to, you can see there's a nice little spot here on the page. So I'm going to actually go ahead and add this to the page. And you'll notice that this is the first time from going to BigQuery into Data Studio where we actually asked you to add data to the report. So we've tried to remove as many roadblocks as possible so that that exploration experience is really quick, not only in terms of returning data to you, but also kind of removing unnecessary steps.
And I think I might have missed it. How did you actually add that? Was that like a copy paste?
Yes, sorry. So you didn't see that on the screen. I did a copy paste here. And I'm kind of working with our larger mouse here to reduce this down to size. But yes, I just copied that component, as we call it, over, and now have added it to my report.
And I think I want to take a step back and realize that this is not a proprietary application on your desktop that has like a .exe or anything. You just did this on the web. And I know we get spoiled because we're kind of used to this being next generation technology. But what you just did was all within the web. You took a piece of content from one source, which is BigQuery. You moved into a totally different tab into Data Studio, and all you did was hit paste. And it remembered the graph, it remembered the data behind it, and it put it in the right place. And it looked pretty easy to me. So, I really like the fact that, again, this is all in the web. Like you're literally just living in Chrome and posting this directly to Data Studio via BigQuery. Very solid.
Yeah, thanks. All right, so the last piece I want to show you all here is how we can actually combine data together. So we looked at how we can use Explore to move from BigQuery and explore data without having to write any SQL. What about if I have multiple data sets or data sources that I actually want to show in one place? So let's take a look at what that can look like. So I've switched over to a new page in my report. And in this report, I'm actually looking at our advertising. So as many of you and your clients and companies do, we are spending across different accounts. So we have Campaign Manager, we have Google Ads, and then we also have Facebook Ads. Mm-hmm. So with Campaign Manager and Google Ads, we have our native connectors for those, so you can connect directly in Data Studio. And then with Facebook Ads, we're using our Community Connector platform, so you can connect to your Facebook data and start visualizing that in Data Studio.
And this right here, this is still awesome, that you can have multiple different data sources in one report. So I think that's one level of awesomeness, and then what you're about to show us just takes it to a whole nother level.
I'm glad you said that, because I think we all can kind of think back to the times when like this was really powerful just to have fresh data that was coming through side by side.
When you just couldn't have that before. Absolutely.
So what I want to do here is we're actually looking at impressions over time, and I want to show these all in one chart. So I mentioned that we worked really hard to make this easy. So what you'll notice is that I'm going through and I'm selecting each chart on the page that I want to combine. So I selected each chart, and then I'm going to right click, and you'll notice that there is a blend data option. When I go ahead and select this for you, we're going to go ahead and blend this data together. And we're going to go ahead and look for whatever the common key is. So in this case, we are blending this across date. And I'll go ahead and view this so it's a little bit easier to look at. Now you'll notice that all of our impression data is side by side showing this across time.
So I know you can't hear it from the users, but I'm going to go ahead and
Thanks, Krista.
for you, because this is really cool.
It is. We are excited about this. So this is live for all Data Studio users. There's actually two ways to blend data, which is what I just showed you, which is where you can select charts that you already have drawn on the page. You can also use the blend data option, which is in the editor screen. So you'll see this here. It says blend data. If you want to actually build that configuration from scratch, that's also a great option for you as well. So try to make it easy.
So when I talk to marketing people, what they often say is that they know that their data is siloed. Everybody knows that it is. They know that it would be better if it wasn't, and they're still not doing it. And usually the reason for that is because it's just too hard. And so what I typically tell people is, if you don't have this type of amazing solution, is to not worry so much about getting it perfect, but to definitely know where your analytics are in each of these platforms and look at all of them. But what you're doing is you're simplifying it so that that excuse goes away, right? And so now you have that option to pull in the different ad campaigns and the different connectors that anybody who connects to Data Studio, you can measure in one place. And so all we need to do is get the ones that aren't yet connected in line.
Yep. Yeah, so I think I would just continue to reiterate to you all that we really do listen to our users. So if you have feedback on anything that we've showed today, or you want to see more functionality, let us know. We have an issue tracker that's available where you can file what we call feature requests. We keep an eye on our public user forums, and then we always want to work on updating our help center to help you make the most of these tools and solutions. As I know this was just a quick look, and as you start diving in, you might have some questions. So take a look at our help center if you want to learn more.
Awesome. So if we flip back over to the deck, I think we have one last slide. Maybe, Liz, you can run us through that.
Sure. And so for those of you who've been watching Measure Matters week in, week out, we appreciate that. We do listen to you, like Mary and Krista both said. This is an ongoing collaborative exercise, right? We hear from you, we speak back to you, and we want to have a continued dialogue as we create new products and new features and new ideas. And Mary, I want to thank you very much for coming in and leading your expertise and talking about Data Studio, really going just to the next level. I mean, Krista and I know Data Studio pretty well. You came in here and blew us away, so that was very cool. One thing we do want to do is we're going to highlight our next episode that's coming in a couple of weeks. September 5th, we're going to take a little bit of a change away from product focus and talk about very much those practitioners who use this every day. I want to talk really deeply about measurement for public relations. This is something that's changed a lot over time from the days when we were getting pitched and pitching. And we're going to talk about what you need to measure. We're going to talk about Data Studio, I swear, and analytics, and get into surveys and talk about all the different pieces that touch our suite and how they can impact that very important principle. So definitely stay connected to Measure Matters. Check our playlist out on YouTube. And that is at tinyurl.com/Measure Matters. And so thank you very much, Mary, for coming. Thanks again, Krista, as always. And we'll see you again on the next Measure Matters.
Thank you.
Thank you.